Welcome to the most in-depth video on climbing falls. If you came here to see humans smashing humans, you are in the right place. If you came to learn how to not smash humans,
that was sick.
you are also in the right place. Now, in the past, we did a lot of different studies and experiments testing every single aspect of climbing falls. So this video is going to summarize all of that nerdy stuff and translate it into a practical guide on how to give a soft catches, including lots of examples, common mistakes, and exceptional cases where unexpected accidents can happen.
Oh my god!
Alright, now this video is a continuation of Belay Masterclass series, and at this point I assume that you already know how to use your belay device and how to properly manage the slack while the climber is climbing. If not, I highly recommend to watch previous episodes first. But if you don't care about any of that and you're here just to see humans falling, let's talk about falling.
There are many factors that influence the fall, but you as a belayer can control only 3 of them. Where do you stand in relation to the first bolt? Is it far? Is it under the bolt? Or maybe on the side? How much slack do you have? And what do you do during the moment of impact? You can move in the direction where the rope is pulling you, essentially making yourself lighter. You can do nothing. Or you can go against the fall to make yourself heavier.
So let's start with slack. There is a common misconception that to give a soft catch you simply need to give more rope, which is both true and false.
The more slack, the bigger the fall, so there will be more kinetic energy that needs to go somewhere, which doesn't sound great. However, at the same time, the bigger the fall, the lower this angle is going to be, which reduces the pendulum into the wall.
So is more slack better or worse?
So to answer that, we already did a study where we measured hundreds of falls with different amounts of slack. So first, yes, falling more will cause more force into the climber's harness. However, the forces at this point are too low to cause any problems for the climber. Let me explain. When we intentionally tried to cause the hardest possible catches, we could not reach forces above 4 kilonewtons to the climber's harness.
Oh, fuck.
A macaqueiro!
That was sick.
And when I tried to feel what that kind of force feels like, I broke my ceiling.
Ouch!
But instead I wanted to break my back, so I changed the setup.
Wow, that was 3.8 kilonewtons. And actually that felt quite okay.
So whatever happens at this moment is unlikely to be a problem. However, what is the problem is how hard the climber would hit the wall. And that's why we also measured the horizontal speed. And we could see a strong correlation that falling more does indeed reduce the speed into the wall by a little bit, meaning that falling more was slightly better. However, that was only the case with soft catches. As soon as we exceeded rope's ability to absorb the impact, the climber is being bounced back up into the wall much harder. So if you simply throw a bunch of slack and do nothing, your climber is probably not gonna appreciate that.
Okay. Now, throughout many years of climbing, I got quite a few falls where it feels like you're falling, and then whoop! And if you ask your belayer, hey, what about the soft catch, please? And you get the answer something like, but I gave you rope. So yeah, if you want to see all the nerdy details, I will link the research videos in the description. But for now, a practical TLDR. Just throwing out the rope is not enough. You need to proceed with a soft catch, and I will show you later how to do that. But first, let's finish the question, how much rope is the good amount?
So from our experiments, all of us noticed that having no slack at all was very, very hard to time the catch.
So for all the beginner climbers out there, if the climber is falling, do not try to keep the climber super, super tight, because you won't have enough time to react to the catch.
This is very important in situations where the climber is just a little bit above the bolt. If I would keep her very tight, not only it would be hard for me to time the catch properly, but I would also risk slamming her right under the bolt, leaving no time or space to deal with the fall. In such cases, it's much better to let the climber fall a bit.
Oh my god.
So, in majority of situations, maybe 1 elbow, max 2 elbows of slack is ideal. Do not judge slack amount purely by this loop, because now I'm standing directly under the bolt, so it looks deeper. If I would be standing more far away, it would look different. Plus, there is often slack in between the roots, so take all of that into consideration. And more rope than that is very, very rarely beneficial. Most of the time it will simply end up in a bigger fall and climber needing to do more pull-ups to get back up. Which can be useful if your partner is progressing on your project faster than you do.
Okay, one real but a bit rare situation where having more slack is actually useful. It is when your climber is going to fall under the roof with the legs, however the upper body is not. In that case, more slack can save the teeth of your climber. Here is the same fall, but this time with more slack. Now, on the flip side, I trust that you are a smart human and understand that if there is a risk of a ground or a ledge fall, you might not want any slack at all. But these are the most risky and tricky moments to handle properly. That's why I will make a separate, fully dedicated video on how to deal with such cases.
You saved me. This is the hardest recording you've got. 3 points.
And another situation where you don't need slack is when the climber is a lot above the bolt already. In that case, the flight time is much greater than normal, so you have plenty of time to give a soft catch, and even taking out the slack is possible. And here's another example where that could have been nice. I love how even after that impact, the dude was still holding the rope. Good job. So they had only a couple of quick draws, so not much friction, and a huge run out. So starting slack is probably not necessary. And then all of this loop could have been taken out during the fall. But I have to admit that the catch does look fun.
Holy shit! Nice, man.
However, if you try to take out the slack during the fall, there are 2 super critical things to take into consideration. First of all, what belaying device are you using?
Some of belay devices do lock up if you have your brake hand up.
Nice.
However, others might not.
Whoa, fuck me. Ow. Oh no, this was really not nice.
And if you're curious what are other cases where belay devices might not work as you expect, I highly recommend to watch these 2 videos.
And second critical thing to consider is that you have to be really fast. When you take the slack, you still need to go down and then explode up. If you're too slow and you would be taking out the slack and falling into the catch, you would break your climber. So I guess this is a good segue to start talking about this soft catch action.
Let's start with the opposite of a hard catch. Here we had only 3 quick draws, the rope does not touch the rock, so very low friction. And we had a huge weight difference between the climber and the belayer.
Ready?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's dramatic enough, you can just put me down.
While this fall was extremely soft for the climber, it can be obviously very dangerous. I'm planning to make a separate episode on how to deal with such huge weight differences safely, but for now, stick with me.
Going, yeah.
Holy shit! That is crazy.
So despite me flying up much less, the catch was still very uncomfortable to belay. But let's see what happens if I take out the slack and sit down during the catch.
That was so hard.
Yeah.
So even though my climber was 20 kilograms heavier than me, I still managed to cause quite a hard catch for him. I wouldn't call this super hard, and his complaining probably comes from the fact that he rarely experiences catches like this.
Now, the reason I'm showing all of this is to illustrate how much heavier we become when we freeze or brace, or even worse, we fall into the fall. Which, if your climber is much heavier, can be obviously beneficial to avoid catches like this.
Oh!
However, if your climber is lighter and you do this, you might get that. Yeah, especially when we just start climbing, we are also afraid of falling ourselves, so entire falling thing is scary, so we simply freeze and do nothing, or even worse, we try to make the fall smaller, and that's a recipe for troubles, and you will need to untrain that if you have that instinct. Now, I'm gonna show you a bunch of clips of hard catches. However, my goal is not to point fingers or blame anyone. When I started climbing, I probably caused some of these myself. And every situation is different, shit happens, and I simply want you to start seeing the difference between hard catch and a soft catch.
Oh, you alright?
Yeah.
So, 2 mistakes. The classic panic taking, and the second mistake is standing too far away from the wall, which makes the belayer fly into the wall, and that also causes a harder catch for the climber. I will make a separate video on this effect in the future, but for now, avoid standing too far from the wall if possible, and let's continue.
You're okay, babes. If you're gonna fall, just call it. Are you okay? You okay, babes?
Yeah, the helmet works.
Yep, that's why we wear a helmet.
So here we have a slabby wall. The climber is above the bolt trying to swap the legs, and she slips. At this point, the only thing she can do is run down the wall, while the belayer did a very quick taking out the slack, which is nice. However, instead of following with a soft catch, she ran back and braced hard for the impact. You can see how her feet are being dragged forward when the rope gets tight.
When the rope gets tight during the fall, at some point the energy needs to go somewhere, and it usually goes into the wall. And how fast the change of direction happens depends on the jerk of the catch. And if for whatever reason the climber is rotating during the catch, and you have a very jerky catch, it will exaggerate that rotation.
Here is one more Instagram famous clip. So yes, her leg got caught behind the rope. She even tried to get it out during the fall. However, notice that she was falling a lot before the rope finally got tight, indicating possibly a lot of slack. But then a sudden rapid stop, which hints a lack of soft catch. Okay, now a couple innocent looking hard catches. Very typical ones.
Zrywaj! Ow!
It's a bit funny that he says you have to learn how to fall. So first of all, if you whip in this weird way, that means that you've been pushing yourself really hard, which is amazing. Good job at that. And weird falls do happen. And it's our job as belayers to make them as comfortable as possible.
¿Estás bien?
So sick dino, and the belayer was probably so impressed that forgot to do anything. You can see him standing frozen and barely being lifted off the ground. Yeah, here again, unnecessary take and stiff catch. Not a big deal in this case, but it definitely contributed to her flipping faster. This one is interesting. You can see him immediately trying to take hard when he sees her falling, and that will make her swing significantly faster compared to if he would give a bit softer catch. And this is a very similar situation.
That was beautiful.
Beautiful.
So, I hope I convinced you that a soft catch is important. And now to cleanse your fear of falling, let's look at some good examples.
I'm too pumped.
Come on.
I'm too pumped. Falling. That was a bit of a theater.
I like this one. I don't know what the Belayer did, but that looks super smooth.
Fight like hell.
And here is a good example why soft catch is essential in shitty situations. So despite her flipping, the flip was slow enough and long enough, and it's not that bad.
Go. Reel it in, come on.
Now this one is my favorite. He got in a similar shitty situation like that girl was, maybe even worse. However,
I'm good.
notice how during the impact he keeps going down. Such a smooth catch.
Okay, so let's talk how to give those smooth catches. The idea is simple. You need to move your weight in the direction the rope is pulling. So if you're close to the wall, you need to jump up, and if you're far from the wall, you need to run forward.
Now we also did a study comparing these two methods, and as a bonus we also compared them against tube slide method, where you let the rope run through the tubular style device. But a practical TLDR for most of the people is that standing closer to the wall and jumping up is the best. It causes super soft catches for the climber, it's very easy to execute and gives a lot of control for the belayer. However, if for whatever reason you're far from the wall during the fall, no worries, just run forward. While this is not as soft as jumping up technique, it's still super good enough. Both of these methods work and cause significantly softer catches for the climber compared to simply standing and doing nothing.
1, 2, 3. Alright, now let's talk timing. You want to be moving up when the rope gets tight. And obviously that will depend on the fall height and how much slack you have. However, here are the good news.
This is a chart of fall height versus how long it takes to fall that height. In practice, majority of the falls are probably gonna be somewhere between 1 and 5 meters, and the perfect timing difference for such falls is only about half a second.
So, no matter if the fall is 1 meter, 2 meters, or 5 meters, the perfect timing is gonna be very, very similar. And here's a good strategy how to do so. Wait until you see the climber actually starting to fall, and then go down, up. So the timing sounds like down, up.
I'm too pumped.
Come on.
I'm too pumped. Falling.
Down, up. And the cool thing is that when you go down and now you're going up, it takes time to go up. And during that moment of the rope will get tight and your weight was already moving up. So you don't need the perfect timing. It's gonna be somewhere there and it's gonna be definitely soft.
You good?
Whatever you want.
1, 2, 3. Falling.
Gotta take a big fall.
Very soft.
Down, up. Also, have an athletic stance, have one leg slightly forward so you have more control. Do not be stiff, be relaxed and let yourself to be pulled up. Because if you are standing square, then it's kind of awkward. So one leg slightly forward, and if you have a step in front of you, it's great to leave one of your legs on that step and kick from it during the catch. Makes it even easier.
Not at all capable of holding this.
Nice.
Oh my god!
Now, in case you're significantly heavier than your climber or there is a lot of friction, then bending your legs in anticipation of the fall and exploding up from this position did seem to help in our studies.
Better. This one was soft. Yes.
However, in 99% of the time when I am belaying a climber which is about 20 kilos lighter than me, I don't even need that technique. Simple down-up works really well.
Now let's talk about intuition, which you will develop with practice, and you will have a sensation of how much you will be pulled up in different situations. So when you will be feeling that you're about to launch in outer space, you obviously don't jump. If you feel that you will be barely moved, then you obviously jump. However, here are a couple of cases where your intuition might let you down. First one is if you're used to climbing mainly indoors, the routes are usually very straight, the rope doesn't zigzag, so you have very little friction, and you will be used to being pulled up way more. And then you will go on a climbing trip and slam your climber to the wall because you're not used to the differences in friction. And the other way around also happens. I climbed a lot outdoors and then I went inside and I jumped like always with the same partner and I flew up so much and hit myself into the wall. So take friction into consideration. And another case where your intuition might let you down is when you change your partners. Especially if you're a girl used to climbing with guys and flying all the time. One day you will go climb with a girl and you will slam that girl into the wall.
And actually in one of our studies, we noticed that I was giving softer catches compared to Hanna, who is 20 kilograms lighter than me, which was a bit of a surprise. However, in another experiment, we got the same. Me and Charlie were giving softer catches compared to Meel.
No.
Ah.
No.
So we did a bit of practicing to work on the timing, and finally she got a very nice soft catch.
That looked quite
Nice.
Yeah, it was 121.
good. 121.
Woo!
Yeah. So yes, ladies, take care of our lady climbers, because we do not have that many of them. Same goes for the guys. Now, to sum up what we covered so far, closer to the wall, athletic stance. If you feel that you're about to fly in outer space, then you don't need any slack. Otherwise, a little bit of slack. Wait until you see the climber leaving the wall. Down, up. That's it, in theory. Explaining all of this sounds a little bit like explaining how to drive a bicycle. Falling right, falling left, turn left. However, until you practice, you will not get it. So practice in a safe environment with someone who knows what he's doing. And it's also a great opportunity for your climber to practice fear of falling or not fear of falling.
So start by taking small top rope falls first, and then build up to bigger and bigger falls. And if you want a nice guide, I shared a nice progression in this video.
Now, there is an interesting case that I want you to be aware. Sometimes, when your climber falls, he or she might scream, "Take!" Now, in case your climber is very experienced and knows what he's doing, then taking might be the right thing. However, sometimes the climber is simply afraid. I had a friend who often climbs with his girlfriend, and he always by default shouts "take" when he is falling. And then he went climbing with me, he is falling and shouting "take." If I would take, he would need new set of legs. So there you have to do your best judgment. Should you listen to your partner, or should you keep him safe? Of course, don't be ignorant asshole and ignore everything your climber is saying, but be aware of this. Now, if you've been following this series so far, you might have noticed that I'm taking a while to complete it. And I actually have quite a few topics that I still want to include. However, sometimes life happens, shit hits the fan, then combine that with my perfectionism, and it's going slowly. But it's going, and it would not be going without your support, without nice people on my Patreons, and without people who were donating to me via other means. It's incredible to know that if I break my back one day or my brain melts and I cannot produce a video for a while, I'm not gonna be broke. So thank you so much. And the same goes for Mammoth. Mammoth been supporting this series since the very beginning, and I'm actually about to go and visit them soon again, because I have incredibly interesting topic that I want to cover, which I'm not gonna spoil yet. But yeah, thank you Mammoth as well. And thank you for watching, enjoy climbing, and see you in that next Sketchy Falls video.